So I'll sing a song, I guess, yeah? I'm supposed to... Okay. Do you see performances like this often? A living room performance.
Yes. Yes.
How's the volume? So there's 2 cameras? Alright. When I was young and surrounded by friends, life was a party that would know no end. But now that I'm older and I'm on my own, I'm spending my days drinking alone. When hopes were high and life was sweet, a pick-me-up got me on my 2 feet. But now things have taken on a different tone, and I'm finding myself drinking alone. Drinking alone, drinking alone, drinking alone. But until then, time will quickly pass by. Old age will encroach in the blink of an eye. But there's one thing that I surely do know: I'm spending my days drinking alone. And all the time I found myself falling down, I never worried because my friends were around. But now things have taken on a different tone, and I'm finding myself drinking alone. I drink alone just because I can. It is the only way I understand the world. But sometimes I feel like I like some company as I wait for my fortune to unfurl. Till then I'm drinking alone, drinking alone, drinking alone. My friends have gone and we've all grown apart, and all I got to show is a beaten up heart. But there's one thing that I surely do know: I'm spending my days drinking alone. Drink alone just because I can. It is the only way to understand the world. This song is on the MySpace site. You guys probably heard it. It's dedicated to all the hookers of LA. Walking on my own, I turn while heading home, and before I reach my place, I saw your pretty face. I saw your pretty face. I almost fell to my feet, what I'd found there in the street. I should have been more discreet, but I couldn't help my heartbeat. The promise in your smile was too sweet. As it goes, if I remember right, I saw you there and we made out all night. Is there a chance or a possibility for us to meet far away from the street? Far away, far away, far away from the street. Far away, far away, far away from the street. So to the street I've been back every night, searching for more than just another thrill ride. But why do I feel like maybe something is wrong? Like you and I, maybe we just don't belong. We don't belong. And then you say, what do we have? Our future was that night, so let go of my hand. Be careful, cause I bite. Only a fool cannot see that 1 and 1 aren't 3. And now, good luck in the street. And now, good luck in the street. You like that one more? Really cool. Can I plug my show? I'll be at M-Bar on April 23rd at 8 p.m. at 753 North Vine in Hollywood. Huh?
Do you have an email address?
MySpace.com/PROMIS. My last name.
It's a very evocative last name.
Huh?
It's an evocative last name.
It's an evocative. It's real. It's not a stage
What is
name.
your last name, Promise?
It's Promis. P-R-O-M-I-S.
Excellent. Jose Promis.
I like their classic song structure.
You do?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So you guys are enjoying it? You guys are a good audience. Night after restless night, try hard as I might, but from home I take flight to where the world is still alright. Down the street there's a bar where I see all my friends who come from near and far, where good times never end, where good times never end. I'm nothing more and I am nothing less, but when you met me, you ranked me with the best. But now we recognize I'm only a big barfly. I'm glad I met someone like you, the closest thing I've known to love that is true blue, for which I thank the Lord for bringing me to you. But as we both lay down to sleep, I can't sleep though I try, 'cause my thoughts are at the bar where everyone's having fun, where I wanna be tonight. I'm nothing more and I am nothing less, but when you met me, you ranked me with the best. But now we recognize I'm only a big barfly. I'm not happy cooped up in here, though I enjoy having you near. But to lose joy in my life would be a lousy thing, my dear. So let's go and grab a beer. It's not that we have to get drunk, I just want to see my friends and to dance to soul and funk, and even rock or rap or a song that might bring a tear to my eyes, whatever, bring it by, 'cause I'm a big barfly. I'm nothing more and I'm nothing less. But when you met me, you ran me with the best, and now we recognize I'm only a big. I'm nothing more and I am nothing less, but when you met me, you let me feel your breast, but now we recognize I'm only a big barfly, 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 barfly. Thank you.
That was awesome.
All right, cool.
I will be giving a presentation that I previously gave at an info demo in Atlanta, partially on the subject of The Great Escape, both the movie and the actual occurrence, but more importantly, giving tips for how to prepare ahead of time and how to develop an effective plan for escape if you yourself are ever taken prisoner by the Germans. Which you never know. And I believe that these are actually fairly applicable to any confinement. You know, they're generally just good tips for planning escapes. Now, if you haven't seen, have any of y'all seen the movie The Great Escape? No?
Yes.
Yes.
You seen it?
Have you seen it? No? Okay. Well, the movie is based on a real prison camp breakout that occurred on the night of March 24th, 1944. It was an escape of primarily British and colonial forces airmen from Stalag Luft III, which was a British prison camp designed especially for officers airmen, pilots, and other air officers. And it was near the town of Sagen, which is now in Poland. Poor Poland, always getting invaded. Somewhere northeast, that's true. Okay, somewhere northeast of Dresden. The escape was planned and prepared for by both American and English and colonial forces, but unfortunately for the Americans, all of the American officers were transferred to another new camp about a month or two before the actual escape happened. Thus, there was no actual Steve McQueen in the original escape. Almost all the Americans were gone, but when they made the movie, they needed an American hero in there. So they added Steve McQueen because he's awesome. Yeah. Okay, the big plan was to have a mass breakout of 200 prisoners that would really be a black eye to the Germans. Unfortunately, due to various misadventures, which I will discuss, only like 76 made it through the tunnel, and only 15 total survived, were still alive after everything played out, and only 3 of them successfully escaped out of Germany. So, one wonders what makes this escape great. If you figure only 3 guys really made it out, and if all but 15 total died, it makes you think it was not a very good escape, especially given that there were other more successful, less famous escapes. I think they're less famous mainly because it was French guys. It's true, there was a mass breakout of about 200 or about 150 French guys that succeeded in getting out. The main thing that makes it not very great is Germany was already nearly defeated. I mean, this was 44, everything was already pretty much on the road to ruin, so you wonder, was there much point to the escape? And this is a big question that unfortunately has only come up in the past 50 years, maybe, or less than that. It's only come up recently, is that really there were other things the Nazis were doing that were a lot worse than keeping airmen in prison camps. So you wonder why this big hoo-ha over this British escape. It was escape, let's see. The main thing that makes it a great escape was it's an awesome story. It's a great story. And one of the reasons it's a great escape, at least in British, in the British consciousness of us, somewhat in the American consciousness, is that the Nazis outright murdered, executed 50 of the escapees that they managed to recapture, and it was a cause célèbre among the British, and it helped kind of motivate the English people. So the results weren't great, and it was actually kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But you can still call it the Great Escape because it was just amazing what they did. It was a tremendous effort of will and organization by all of the men involved. The entire camp was involved. It wasn't just the 200 who planned to get out. I'm not sure if I have the exact numbers, but pretty much, I think upwards of 1,000 guys all contributed in some way to making the escape happen. And kept it secret the whole way through from the fairly alert, actually, Nazis. Let's see. I'm feeling less prepared than I might have been. Okay. Excuse me. Now, the first error, or the first thing that led to the Great Escape was a big error on the part of the Nazis, which was putting all of their most determined escapers in one camp. It seemed like a good idea to them. I don't think it's a very good idea. They said, we're going to make one unescapable camp. I mean, you look at what happened to the Titanic, it's like unsinkable there. So then we're going to make an unescapable camp, and we're going to put all of our persistent escapers there. And so then you see what happened. They put all of their repeat offenders in there. And the camp, this is an extremely poor drawing. from my memory of a drawing I once saw of the camp. It was basically a big rectangle. I'm not too far off. I just rechecked it. You need to sit down. You're distracting me. Basically, we have all the barracks that the guys were in, and then a big fence, and then this was where all the Germans were based, the German barracks, the cooler, which was the, solitary. I believe that even the Germans were calling it the cooler by the end. It's the prisoners called it the cooler because I think it was near the kitchen. It was near the ice house for the kitchen. I could be totally wrong. Okay. And the cooler is mainly famous because of the movie, because that's where Steve McQueen always was, in the cooler. But the main guy organizing the escapes was Roger Bushell. He was a persistent escaper, and he was the driving force behind the whole escape. And he thought big. It was his idea, not just a bunch of little piddling escapes. We're going to have one big escape, and we're going to get 200 guys out, and it's going to embarrass the Germans, and it's going to, distract their forces from other war efforts. And it was the main problem is that it's all these young guys who are trained and fired up, and then you lock them in a camp, and they just go nuts. They have to try to escape. They have to cause trouble. There's just no other way about it. So the plan called for not one tunnel, but 3 tunnels, which were called Tom, Dick, and Harry. 2 of them, one of them went from one of the outside barracks out to the trees. One of them went from one of the inner barracks out to the trees, and then another one went from one of these barracks all the way out, actually under all of the Germans. Now, these tunnels were 30 feet down. They dug straight 30 feet down, and then something on 80 yards out to get to the tree line outside all the barbed wire and the gun emplacements. Because the Germans had seismic detectors planted in the ground all around the camp that were supposed to detect any digging, so they had to dig really deep.
Wow.
They made little train cars. They built wooden rails that went the length of the tunnel, and they built little cars on wheels to pull the dirt in and out of the tunnel. They strung electric lights. They tapped the electricity for the camp and strung electric lights the length of the entire wire. They built a bellows system for each one, I believe, out of kit bags and various other things with piping to pipe air in and out of the tunnels. The main thing they used were powdered milk tins from the Red Cross packages that they would, dump the powdered milk out and then basically solder the tins together to make piping. They made all kinds of things, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about their preparations later. And then the escape happened. They had to wait for a moonless night, because then that gives them more advantage. Unfortunately, and there's some other stuff, they ended up having to shut up one of the tunnels, and another one of the tunnels. They shut up the inner tunnel and used it as a storehouse. They put excess dirt there when they started having trouble getting rid of the dirt. They were digging up other places, so they filled it in part way and used it to store all of their stuff. That was never found. It was underneath a sump in the bathhouse, and they would just, every time they went in there, they would scoop out all the water and lift out a poured concrete tray to climb down in there. The Germans never found that one. I saw a TV show about them excavating it. Some people went back to Stalag Luft III and excavated the 3rd tunnel that the Germans had never discovered. One of the tunnels was discovered. The advantage to that was then the Germans got pretty lazy. They were like, oh, wow, we busted their big tunnel. And then, of course, it turned out there was yet another tunnel that they didn't know about. Unfortunately, the tunnel was not long enough. It had curved slightly without them knowing it, so that their distance was incorrect. And they were several meters short of the tree line. I mean, nonetheless, 75 guys did get out. But there were terrible delays. There was an air raid during the middle of their attempted escape, so the electricity was shut down in the tunnel for I think 2 hours. And then eventually a guard saw some guys at the tree line, and then that stopped the escape. The Germans did an inventory of what was gone after the escape attempt, and 4,000 bedboards were missing because their cots were on slats of wood. So 4,000 bed boards were gone. 90 beds had completely disappeared, along with 52 tables, 34 chairs, 1,700 blankets, and the entire effort had used more than 1,400 powdered milk tins.
How did they not notice?
The guys were very crafty. The bedboards were actually pretty tricky because the Germans started to suspect that bedboards were disappearing. And the guy in charge of collecting bedboards just went around and did a monster levy of bedboards before the Germans could count to keep a running tally, because the Germans hadn't counted the bedboards ahead of time. So then one of the guys in charge was like, wow, we need to count the bedboards to see if they're disappearing. But the prisoners got wind of that and just took all the bedboards they could and hid them before the Germans could count. So then the Germans weren't ever able to get an accurate reading of how many bedboards had been stolen. So ultimately, they rounded up all but 3 of the escapers. 2 Norwegians managed to make it to Sweden by hopping a Swedish ship. The sailors helped them. They managed to hook up with some Swedish sailors who smuggled them onto a ship. And 1 Dutch man made it to the British consulate in Spain. The Europeans just had a much better chance of surviving. It was very hard for the British to blend in and hide in Europe. But the Dutchman was able to pass for German. He was able to go through the German countryside and pass for German because he spoke German, and he already basically was close enough. Dutch is a lot closer to German than English. So that is your background information on the Great Escape. The winner of Box A has to be, whoever guessed, one of Pete's sandwiches. All right, so we shall see what actually is in the box. In addition to a number of plastic grocery bags, is a thermos, because with a sandwich you always need something to drink. And not only is this a thermos, it is an unlicensed Hello Kitty product that has good Hello Kitty with flowers, bad Hello Kitty with double horns, and it says Happy Day on it. And in Box B, okay, I believe this guess was from Leo, who guessed batteries. Now, in order to understand why this was the best guess, we have to remember that batteries contain electricity, which is akin to living things. So for making such an excellent guess, Leo will win a matched set of alarmingly anatomically correct farm animals. And so for Box C, the best guess is a pair of loafers, because they go on bodies and are associated with relaxation. You win for guessing a pair of loafers. The trippy naked lady filled with goo. No, it is for decorative purposes only. It says so on the tag. And that was the Guess What Is in the Boxes for this episode of Live from Pete Meyer's Living Room.
For those of you that won prizes tonight, I hope you enjoy them and they give you many, many great years of service. For those of you, I'd like to thank you for coming out to the show. And for those of you that come back since last week's show, I appreciate return customers. That's excellent. And I hope to see many, many more of you next week here at Pete Meyer's Living Room.